Salt curing is a method as old as time, or at least as old as our ancestors need to preserve food. This ancient technique has been a cornerstone of human survival for millennia. Long before refrigerators, humans discovered that salt held the key to extending the life of meat. It was a revelation that changed the course of history. The Egyptians, renowned for their mummification practices, were also masters of salt curing. Their expertise in preservation was unparalleled. They used it to preserve fish and poultry, ensuring their provisions lasted through long journeys and scorching desert heat. This was crucial for their survival in such a harsh climate. The Romans too were avid practitioners of salt curing. Their vast empire relied heavily on this method to sustain their armies. Their legions marched on a diet heavily reliant on salt-preserved meats, allowing them to conquer vast territories far from their supply lines. Salt was as valuable as gold to them. Think about it, legions of soldiers marching across Europe with their salt pork and hardtack. That's dedication to preservation. It was a logistical marvel of its time. Today, we continue to appreciate and utilize these ancient techniques, blending them with modern culinary practices to create something truly special. So, how does salt, a seemingly simple mineral, work its magic on meat? The answer lies in osmosis. Salt is a hygroscopic substance, meaning it attracts water. When you pack meat in salt, you create a high-salt environment outside the meat and a relatively low-salt environment inside. Water molecules naturally want to move from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration, and they do this through cell walls. This process is called osmosis. In the case of salt curing, the water in the meat is drawn out through the cell walls and into the surrounding salt, dehydrating the meat and making it inhospitable to bacteria. But salt curing is more than just dehydration. As the meat cures, beneficial bacteria present in the environment begin to thrive. These bacteria, particularly those from the lactobacillus family, produce lactic acid. Lactic acid not only adds a distinctive tangy flavor to the meat but also further inhibits the growth of harmful bacteria. The result is a transformed product, preserved for the long haul and imbued with a depth of flavor that only time and salt can create. Salt curing might sound like something out of an ancient alchemist's handbook, but it's remarkably straightforward. This age-old technique has been used for centuries to preserve and enhance the flavors of meat. You don't need fancy equipment or a degree in food science. In fact, the beauty of salt curing lies in its simplicity and accessibility. You can achieve fantastic results with just 3 basic ingredients: high-quality meat, pure salt, and a curing container. These elements work together to transform your meat into something truly special. Let's start with the star of the show, the meat. Freshness is paramount here. The quality of your final product depends heavily on the quality of the meat you begin with. You want meat that's been handled properly and is free from any signs of spoilage. Look for vibrant color and a clean, fresh smell. Fatty cuts like pork belly, duck breasts, and salmon are particularly well suited for salt curing. These cuts absorb the salt well and develop a rich, savory flavor. The fat renders beautifully during the process, adding richness and moisture to the final product. Next up, the salt. This is where the magic happens. Not all salt is created equal when it comes to curing. The type of salt you use can significantly impact the flavor and texture of your cured meat. Table salt often contains additives like iodine, which can impart an unpleasant flavor to your meat. These additives can also interfere with the curing process. Instead, opt for pure salts like sea salt, kosher salt, or Himalayan pink salt. These salts are free from additives and dissolve evenly. These salts dissolve evenly and won't introduce any unwanted flavors. They help to draw out moisture from the meat, creating a perfect environment for curing. Finally, you'll need a vessel for curing. The container you choose is just as important as the meat and salt. A non-reactive container made from glass, ceramic, or food-grade plastic works perfectly. These materials won't react with the salt or meat. Avoid using metal containers, as they can react with the salt and affect the flavor of the meat. Stick to non-reactive materials to ensure the best results. Now that we have our ingredients and equipment ready, it's time to get started. Let's dive into the heart of the matter, the salt box method, a traditional technique used for centuries. Don't let the name intimidate you. This technique is surprisingly simple and very effective. Begin by ensuring your meat is dry. This is a crucial first step. Pat it down thoroughly with paper towels to remove any excess moisture. This step is crucial, as any surface moisture can dilute the salt and hinder the curing process, affecting the final flavor. Next, Grab your salt and generously coat the entire surface of the meat, ensuring an even layer. Make sure to get into all the nooks and crannies, covering every part. Think of it as giving your meat a full-body salt massage, ensuring every inch is covered. Once your meat is nicely enrobed in salt, it should look like a snowy landscape. Place it in your curing container, making sure it's well situated. If you're curing multiple pieces of meat, avoid overcrowding the container to ensure even curing. Give them some breathing room, allowing air to circulate around each piece. Cover the container tightly with a lid or plastic wrap to keep it sealed. Then, transfer it to the refrigerator, where the magic happens. Now comes the hard part, waiting. Patience is key in this process. Curing time varies depending on the thickness of the meat, so plan accordingly. Thin cuts like fish fillets might only need a day or two, making them quick to prepare, while thicker cuts like pork belly can take up to a week or more, requiring more patience but rewarding you with rich flavors. The curing process. As your meat rests in its salty cocoon, a remarkable transformation takes place. The salt works its osmotic magic, drawing out moisture and inhibiting bacterial growth. You'll notice liquid accumulating in the bottom of the container. That's the moisture being pulled from the meat. It's essential to pour off this liquid regularly, usually every day or two, to maintain a high salt environment. During this stage, you might be tempted to peek at your curing meat but resist the urge. Every time you open the container, you introduce air and potentially unwanted bacteria. Trust the process. Your patience will be rewarded. As the days turn into nights, the meat undergoes a remarkable transformation. The salt, working in conjunction with the lactic acid bacteria, alters the protein structure of the meat, resulting in a firmer texture and a more intense flavor. Drying and aging, the final transformation. After the allotted curing time, it's time for the final act, drying and aging. Remove the meat from its salty bed and give it a good rinse under cold water to remove any excess salt. Pat it dry with paper towels and get ready to hang it. Find a cool, dry, and well-ventilated spot to hang your meat. An old refrigerator, a cool basement, or even a drafty attic can work well. The key is to maintain a consistent temperature and humidity level. You can hang the meat using butcher's twine or simply drape it over a rack. This drying and aging phase is where the magic truly happens. As the meat hangs, it continues to lose moisture, concentrating its flavors even further. The surface will develop a pellicle, a thin, tacky layer that helps to protect the meat from spoilage. Ready to enjoy, determining doneness. Knowing when your salt-cured meat is ready for consumption is a bit like knowing when a good loaf of bread is done baking. It takes experience and a bit of intuition. However, there are a few telltale signs to look for. First and foremost, the meat should feel firm to the touch, with no soft or squishy spots. Secondly, it should have lost a significant amount of weight, usually around 30% of its original weight. This weight loss is a good indication that enough moisture has been removed. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, trust your senses. The aroma of properly cured meat is intoxicating, savory, complex, and deeply satisfying. If it smells good, it probably is good. Once you've determined that your salt-cured creation is ready, it's time to slice, dice, and savor the fruits of your labor.